always a pleasure to let me into your home every Thursday night, Channel 19, 6 p.m., replayed at 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. on Friday. Well, this is the time of year where we interview political candidates, people running for office to represent you at various levels of government. Today's another one of those days. I don't know if we've had a bigger guest on the show before, other than, of course, the shows where I've been a guest. I want to welcome Chris Fields, running for Congress in Congressional District 5, to the show. Chris, thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. Glad you can have me on. Appreciate it.
Hey, we always make time for people. Chris is running for Congress in Congressional District 5. Why don't you take a second to tell the audience who you are, why you're running, and what cities is Congressional District 5 represent?
Sure. I'm Chris Fields, like you said. I'm a 21-year combat veteran of the United States Marine Corps. And life for me started out being born to a 15-year-old mom who had 3 kids before she was 20. I got into this race because our country's on the wrong track. We have career politicians that are dividing us rather than uniting us. We have some serious challenges in the next few years, and I know that we're up to it. But what I'm not confident of is Washington's ability to solve our problems.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned Washington's ability to solve our problems. I mean, you look at Congress's approval rating. You know, it's down there with Ahmadinejad's approval rating. You know, it's just really bad. It doesn't seem to matter which party is in control of which house. What's your take? What's your take on Congress's performance the past couple Congresses, the past couple of years? You know, what's your take? We got a Senate that can't pass a budget. We've got a House that, you know, I mean, what do you think about it just as a citizen?
Yeah, right now their approval rating is around 12%. And I think that what that's indicative of is people responding to those surveys, looking at Washington, D.C., and seeing that these guys have no ability to own up to any responsibility whatsoever. These guys just want to point fingers. They don't want to pass legislation because everyone's afraid that, well, you know, if it doesn't work out, then I'm going to get bounced out of office. They just don't want to take charge, and they don't want to lead. And right now, that's what we need. We need leadership in Washington. These guys are also afraid to cross the aisle. There is nothing wrong with saying, hey, that Democrat over there has got a good idea, or that Republican over there has got a good idea. We have created a situation, I think the media is a lot responsible for that, where there's more political gain in not working together. And so, in other words, if you take a look at our current congressman, the guy I'm running to replace, Congressman Keith Ellison, Keith has figured out that, hey, the more he can, you know, stir up the pot, the more popular he is, the more his campaign treasure increases, and the more he gets to stay in Washington and become a icon or even a celebrity.
Career politician.
That's it. That's exactly right, and that's what we need to get away from. Well,
I can certainly understand that, and I'm sure everybody out there is just as frustrated. Let me jump to. Let me just start on a few issues.
Sure.
To start. You know, I know how big jobs and unemployment and things like that are. Washington seems to have no clue what to do other than point fingers as far as getting the economy moving, or perhaps getting out of the way and letting the private sector do some of those things. What's your take on what is going to get this economy going? We seem to be, you know, chugging along at a very slow growth. What needs to happen to get that private sector moving again?
Well, interesting you should mention that. Okay, so this morning, my wife and I, it's Sunday morning when we're taping, and so we walked to breakfast. And we came across 2 luxury building projects in downtown, and a big old sign on who they're being financed by. And they're being financed by government, okay? One building is, it's North 3rd, and it's being in part financed by HUD. The same agency that's helping to kick people out of their homes is financing luxury buildings for condos.
So the Federal Housing and Urban Development.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so another building is being financed by the city of Minneapolis and a couple of other state agencies here. And so when you talk about how to get the economy moving, how to get this private sector to come in here and start doing their part and putting the investment in, the fact is their investment dollars are being crowded out by the government dollars, okay? These builders and contractors can get private financing, and that private financing leads to jobs. Whereas when you finance it with government money, it leads to higher taxes for everyone. And so the key to getting this whole thing together is to have government do less financing, sometimes less investment, okay, in things that the private sector can invest and grow themselves.
You know, it's interesting you bring up the federal government in there, the state government, the city of Minneapolis. The role of government has just, and what level of government should be doing what, has gotten all intertwined and intermixed, it seems. It seems like there's no limit on what the federal government can do. Do we need to go back and redefine the federal government's role and what's a state government's role and the local government's role? How big an issue is that for you?
Well, I think that's going to be central to this campaign. Look, I'm running against an opponent who thinks that there's an endless supply of dollars and there's an endless, and that the federal government's power is limitless. Okay, I don't believe that. Okay, I think that there is a role for government, okay, in our lives, absolutely. But where we have to determine, what we need to determine right now is it the federal government? Is it the state government? Is it the local government? Take, for example, education. Okay, since we've had the Department of Education, high school graduation rates have not improved. Okay, the federal government's Department
of 50, what's it been around since the 60s?
Since Jimmy Carter started it and during his administration in the 70s.
So 35 issues.
Yeah, and it has not accomplished its goal. If you look right now, they spent in 2011 $25 billion on 60 competitive grant programs. Now let's think about what a grant program is, okay? And let's think about that number. That's essentially people in Minnesota sending their money to Washington, D.C., and then we beg for some of it to come back via these grants. And what I'm saying is that model is broken, okay? Because we know as Minnesotans, when we send $1 to Washington, D.C., only 74 cents comes back, okay? So
I'm surprised it's that high.
Right. Our argument and what we're trying to promote is, hey, let's leave the whole dollar in Minnesota. Okay, let's leave the whole dollar in Minnesota and let's fix our own education system. I'm not saying that the federal government has no role, but what I'm saying is we need to leave more of our dollars here in Minnesota. And so to hire a congressman who actually wants to send more of our dollars to Washington, D.C., only to get 74, lose 26 cents on the dollar, that doesn't seem like it's a smart investment.